So we're looking at the almost full moon. It is September the 8th of 2022. We're going to let the moon pass across the frame here as the Earth rotates. And that should take about 10 or 15 minutes. ISO 64, half a stop between F8 and 11. Eighth of a second. The lens is a Tamron SP 200-500 zoom, an old manual focus Tamron Adaptol lens from the 1980s, if I'm not mistaken. And we're at 500 millimeters to give the moon the maximum size, which is still not huge. There's still plenty of room left in the frame there for other stuff, although there isn't other stuff at the moment. But the point I'm making here is that 500 millimeters on a full frame camera doesn't make a massively huge moon. You know, you really need 1500 to 2000 to get a frame filling moon. So that's that. I had thought about putting a 2x teleconverter on. I may actually get around to that. But for now we're sticking with the zoom lens at its maximum zoom of 500 millimeters. And we're just going to let the moon pass through the frame here. It might be near its zenith. And now that I'm looking at things, it might even possibly be heading on its way down, which is a problem. I was expecting it to rise through the frame, but now I'm not so sure that it'll do that. It may actually be descending. Let's think here. Indeed, the more I think about it, the more I think it may well, if not be descending, be more or less level for a bit. So it won't rise through the frame all that much, if at all. So I might have set things up a bit wrong here. And I'm debating what to do. I think, because I suppose I could check on Stellarium or something to see what the actual situation is, but it's 10:30-ish. It rose, I don't know exactly when, but probably 4 or 5 hours ago. Yeah, it does seem to be moving up a little. It does seem to be, I'd say, like maybe close to level, but still rising a bit up through the frame, but at a shallower angle than I was thinking, now that it's later. So we'll let it do its thing. We won't change the camera position for this sequence. Yeah, it's definitely rising. I can see now it is rising, but at a much shallower angle than it was earlier, because it's close to the zenith, as it were. So I would be better off doing a video where it was more towards the center of the frame than I started, in terms of the up and down part of things. Let's see here. Should I switch things around a bit? I think, you know what I'm going to do, because it's rising slowly, but it's not rising as much as I was expecting it to. Like, I thought that by the time it hit the middle of the frame, it would be pretty well smack in the middle, but it's actually somewhat below that. It's definitely not going to be right smack in the middle of the frame when it gets there, in terms of the up and down side of things. So if I leave this running the way it is, it will basically go across the lower part of the frame. What to do. I guess we'll leave well enough alone. There's 14 minutes and 30 seconds of recording time left. It probably won't even need all of that to get across the other side of the frame. Maybe another 6 minutes of recording before it hits the other side of the frame. 7 at most. So yeah, we're just gonna let it run. We're not gonna adjust anything. But then what I'll probably do is another clip where I start with the moon higher when I start it, rather than the far lower left of the frame. I'll have it more towards the lower middle, and we'll let it run again. But yeah, it's still rising, it's still going up, but very slowly, very shallow angle. Off to my left, there is Jupiter, and it's almost at the same level of as the moon now. A little tiny bit lower. But if I was to pan the camera, I might actually be able to just pan and bring Jupiter into the frame, because it's just slightly lower than the moon. I think what I'll do is I'll wait till we get towards the end of this, when the moon is right up near the other side of the frame. I will pan and see if we can bring Jupiter into view. Okay, now I think I see Saturn very faintly up to the right. It's almost like a triangle with Jupiter on the left, the moon is the lower point of a sort of flat downwards pointing triangle, and then Saturn up to the right. I will double check that on Stellarium, but that's, I think, I'm quite certain I'm looking at Saturn up to the right, above the moon, also above Jupiter, and it's making like a, okay, I was never very good at can't even remember her name now. But anyway, I'm not sure quite what kind of triangle we got here, but definitely something of a triangle with, as I said, Jupiter on the left, then the moon to the right, and then Saturn higher, significantly higher than both Jupiter and the moon to the right. I might even, well, no, I was thinking of trying to get Saturn by panning around with the camera, but that's not going to work out very well. So, anyhow, not bad viewing for urban situation. I mean, I can't really see much else, to be honest, because we're in a highly light polluted city called Montreal. So I can see Jupiter quite well, nice bright planet. I can see the moon, obviously. Saturn, as I said, it's very faint, but I can make it out. What else? Not really much else I can see. A couple of faint stars, and that's it. Partly because the moon is so bright. I mean, we've got an almost full moon. Yeah, so I see a star, I think, directly above me. But yeah, it's basically, that's all I can see is two planets, the moon one or two faint stars. Oh, what's that? There's something off to the right of the moon. Is that Saturn? Oh, this is interesting. I could be mistakenly believing that something faint and up above to the right is Saturn. It might not be. I think, and I didn't notice it before, but there is just a very faint dot not far from the moon, like maybe a third of a hand span or something, or certainly not more than half a hand span. That might actually be Saturn. I did not check stellarium and so on to see exactly where the planets would be. Jupiter is easy to recognize, it's just so bright. But the more I think about it, I think what I'm seeing up and to the right is probably a star, not Saturn. And Saturn is actually not that far from the moon. And I may, because we have time, and the moon's like heading towards the, it's basically heading out of the frame here. I think I will try and point at what I think is probably Saturn once the moon gets further to the right of the frame. I may try Jupiter first because it's easier to spot, and then come back to the moon and then try to pan up towards Saturn, because if what I think now is Saturn, it is relatively close to the moon, like, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 degrees to the right of the moon, a degree or two higher than the moon. And if we point the camera at it, we might be able to see the rings, although it'll be a tiny little dot, but possibly the rings will become visible. So the moon's almost there at the edge of the frame. We got more than 7 minutes of recording time left. So what I'm going to do first is pan the camera to the left, quite a distance, but nevertheless, try to get Jupiter. Like the Jupiter should be at about the same height as the moon. In fact, it looks a little higher than the moon right now. So we're just going to pan left towards Jupiter. What's happening here? I don't see it. It might be a little higher. Let's raise the camera a bit. I'm swiveling the camera around and I'm not seeing. Oh, there it is. So that's Jupiter. We'll bring it down a little. So Jupiter's very close to the center of the frame here. Okay, so that's Jupiter, pretty well dead center in the frame. What I'm going to do is increase the exposure. I think I will increase the ISO. We'll keep the shutter speed the same. Keep the f-stop same. We'll increase the ISO. See if we can get Jupiter's moons to come into view. So we're up at 400 now. I'm not sure if the moons are becoming visible. Let's bring it up higher. It's 2000 ISO. So Jupiter will be washed out, but we may see some moons. As you can see, it's very small. It's just a little bright point of light. I'm going to bring the ISO back down to 64, so it's good for the moon. We'll go back to the moon. So I'm going to pan to the right. What happened to Jupiter? Okay, it really goes fast. So we'll try to pan slower. So there's Jupiter in the center. We'll try to slowly, woof. Okay, so forget about slow panning. So let's come back to the moon. Okay, we're almost there. That went past it, so where is it? Is it above or below? Not sure here. Ah, there it is. So it was lower. So there's the moon. And what I think might be Saturn is off to the right and a little higher. Not seeing much here. I'm going to raise the ISO. There it is. Yeah, the top right. So this, I think, because I have not checked, is just going by sort of gut feeling, shall we say. I think that may be Saturn there, as opposed to what I thought was Saturn, which is considerably further to the right and higher. I think that's probably a star. So I think this is probably Saturn. I will raise the ISO. I don't know if the rings might become visible. I mean, it's so tiny that it's really hard to tell. But anyhow, we got about 4 minutes of recording time left. I'm going to bring the ISO back down to 64, making the planet pretty well invisible. We'll come back to the moon. So we have to lower the camera a bit. There we go. That's the moon. So that's it. We got 3 minutes 30 seconds of recording time left, and the moon's a little bit below center of the frame. And as I said, this camera, which by the way is a Nikon D810, records for 20 minutes. Some other cameras will go for half an hour. Others will go even longer. But, you know, this is an older DSLR, and Nikon set a 20-minute time limit on recording time. And so now we're less than 3 minutes of recording time left. But that was kind of interesting, being able to pan around a bit. Again, not, you know, I don't have a super smooth tripod head here, obviously. I haven't got a special panning head. I did this all by hand. It's a Manfrotto tripod with a Manfrotto head, a very typical 141 head. Very simple, straightforward tripod head. And so I've just been adjusting it manually. Let's see if we can get back to Jupiter again. I'm just going to bring the moon a bit lower, because I think if we do things properly, we should have should be able to get Jupiter in there. Looks like I went past it, so I guess it is a bit higher. Let's raise things up here a bit. Where's Jupiter? Ah, there it is. There's Jupiter. So I'm going to keep the ISO low. Basically haven't changed anything in terms of ISO. So as to maybe have a little bit of color in Jupiter. You know, I was looking at it earlier, and in still images, and even though it was a tiny little dot, you know, when you zoomed in on it in the still image, you know, you could see some color. You could see the bands. Let's just quickly go to a higher ISO. There's 200. There's 400. That may make the moons more visible. Let's go up to 1,000. We have 52 seconds left. So I did not adjust focus. I'm not sure how well focused this is, but that is definitely Jupiter, and hopefully some of the moons are visible because we boosted the ISO up to 1,000, so that should make some of the moons visible. So that's it. We're just coming to the end of a 20-minute recording session here, and I think we're pretty well done for the time being. I may take some photos of the moon later, but not a whole lot more video. I think I may try to get some still images of Jupiter and its moons.